Hello everyone. Today we'll be doing a tier list on patch 13.7 for bot lane. Before I start actually ranking the champions, I just want to go over the difficulty setting that I've set for each champion. So red means hard. Champions with a red outline are hard to classify as hard. Blue is like medium difficulty, and green is easy. When it comes to classifying the champion difficulty, I pretty much just look at two main things, right? Firstly, like the champion's mechanics itself. So, like for example, a champion like Kalista is hard to play. Like it's hard to just pilot the champion in general because she has a hop and like it's pretty mechanical when it comes to team fighting and skirmishing. Whereas a champion like Jinx is really easy mechanically, right? Like pretty much doesn't have any hidden mechanics in her kit. She just auto attacks with her minigun and then changes to her range, changes to her rockets when she wants more range. So it's pretty simple to execute and play. And the second thing, besides just like mechanics and piloting the champion, also like to just look at like the champion playstyle and how the champion and how like you want to play the champion. So for example, a champion like Lucian has a pretty easy hit, right? Like it's pretty simple to like use his abilities and whatnot. But it's actually pretty hard to play him in a lot of games because he requires a very aggressive mindset when it comes to lane, and you often need to get a very large lead or like a sizable lead in lane to actually make the champion useful. And especially like when it comes to playing like a specific combo like Lucian Nami, you have to play in a very specific way, and it requires um, a great deal of thought to be able to execute it well, which is why I'd classify him as a hard champion, even though he's quite easy to play like mechanically. All right, so let's get started. So first, I have Aphelios. I'd put Aphelios in A blind right now. I think the champion is actually quite decent. Not gonna lie, I think he's a bit underrated. I think he's good in the current meta right now because like people are playing a lot of Jinx, a lot of Zeri, some Xayah, Twitch, etc. I think he's actually fine into these kinds of matchups. He does lose to Jinx, but I think it's like kind of a skill matchup. So if you're very proficient at the Aphelios side, you can make it work versus Jinx. The thing with this champion though is that his like how effective this champion is highly dependent on your skill level on the champion. So I wouldn't pick him up unless you're really good at it. But if you are good at the champion, then I think it's in a pretty decent spot right now. The crit items are really good on Aphelios. Once you get your Infinity Edge and once you get your LDR, like you actually do so much damage. It's insane, especially with the blue gun. Yeah, so I think he's pretty decent right now. I put him as hard because I think mechanically he's just hard to play. Like it's hard to get used to his guns and his gun order and gun swapping, etc. And also as a play style, he's kind of hard to play because you have to have the right guns for the right setting. So for example, if you're playing Aphelios versus high range champions like Jinx, Ezreal, then you really want to have your green blue combo or at least green white when you come to team fights, because like the green gun gives you so much range to be able to deal with the high range threats, which is why I'd put him as a hard champion to play. Yeah, moving on from Aphelios, I have Ashe. I'll put Ashe also in A blind. I think Ashe is a decent champion right now as well with how strong Infinity Edge is. Like going Kraken Slayer into Infinity Edge, PD, LDR, etc. is a really strong build on Ashe. I think she pretty much has no losing matchups. Like she can pilot any matchup. She's strong in lane, and she's really easy to play because there isn't much to her kit besides just basic kiting and just knowing when to fire like your arrow at the right time. She scales really well, so I think she doesn't really have any like real weaknesses. But like the reason why I wouldn't put her in S is because she isn't as strong as the other champions that are going to be in S, like when she's at her best. I'd put her in A because she's just a solid pick right now. Caitlyn, I think I'll put her in B. She's pretty strong when you can get like the right conditions for the champion. Like for example, Caitlyn often wants a pushing lane with played with like Kogmaw or Lux, and wants to snowball lane and get a lot of plates, accelerate herself. I think she's really strong if she has the right conditions. Like if she does have a pushing lane and if she can and if she can lane without being ganked too much. But the reason why I'd put her in B and not A is because like she isn't as versatile as like Ashe. Like she needs a lot more to be useful. Like she needs things to be set out for her and like conditions to be met for her to be useful. Whereas Ashe is a lot more versatile and can work in a lot more different situations and scenarios. I'd put her in B. I think Caitlyn, like her kit is like medium difficulty. Like it's kind of hard to get used to her traps and use her traps quite well. Like you can tell the difference between a good Caitlyn player and a great Caitlyn player by how they use their traps. I think there's a moderate amount of difficulty there, and I think her playstyle is just like is also medium difficulty. Like it's not too hard to execute, but it's not too easy to execute either. Like you need a very aggressive mindset and can't afford to make much mistakes, which is why I'd put her in medium difficulty. Draven, I'd put him in A blind. Once again, I think Draven is like you almost need one trick a one trick level of proficiency to be able to play this champion well. I'll put him as hard because I think his axe mechanic is quite hard to get used to at first. Once you get used to it, it's fine, but pretty hard to learn at the start. And also his playstyle, once again, requires a very aggressive mindset, and you have to be very confident in your ability to take skirmish as well and to fight. And be confident in your movement, and just be confident in your ability to go forward. I think if you're a Draven one trick, then Draven. If you're a one trick at Draven and the game is really good for Draven, then it becomes S. But once again, I don't think he's as versatile. Like you need certain conditions to be met as well. Like he most likely wants to play with an engaged support like Nautilus or Pyke, be able to fight a lot. He also wants a lot of jungle attention bot lane. Like he wants his jungler to gank bot a lot. If this doesn't happen, then the champion loses a lot of value, which is why I think he's that versatile. So I'll leave him in A. I think his build right now is pretty good with IE. I think any champion that can build IE is pretty good on this patch, so that's why I put him in A as well. Ezreal, I'll put him in B with Caitlyn. I think this champion, well, firstly I'll talk about the difficulty, right? So like the champion itself is it's always gonna be like quote unquote hard to play because his entire DPS output is just gated by his Q, right? Like by a skill shot. So essentially, if you're better at hitting skill shots, you'll do more damage as Ezreal. So in that sense, I think he's moderately hard to play. His playstyle is pretty easy. Like you just want to use your Q to play aggressively in lane and stack your passive, and then in team fights, you just want to play off your Q. So his playstyle isn't that hard, but yeah, so I'll put him as medium. I think I'd put him in B because his matchups aren't that good. Like he's not that good into Jinx. He just gets outscaled. Unless you outplay them, he's not like that good into Aphelios, Draven, Ashe. So that's why I'd put him in B. I think he's not that strong in general as well because his itemization isn't that good. After 3 items, like after Triforce, Immune, Trojan, he kind of falls off. Like there aren't that really any good like fourth items to build on him anymore, especially now that Cyrilda's isn't that good on him. It also sucks that he doesn't have like a really good armor pen option. You either have to buy like the crit LDR, you're kind of wasting stats on crit, or you just go Cyrilda's, which doesn't give you that much value since you don't have much lethality. So which is why I'd put him in B right now. Kaisa I'd put in A. I think Kaisa is really versatile right now because she has a multitude of builds. You can go Bob, you can go Lethal Tempo, you can go like the Alice Poke build, Manamune, like the Manamune Luden's Companion build, or you can go Static Shiv, Rageblade, or you can even go Eclipse, Rageblade. So I think she's pretty versatile. So having a high level of versatility makes her pretty blindable, so she can adapt to the game. She's a medium difficulty as well because I think, well, while her kit isn't really that hard to play in and of itself, I feel like her playstyle changes a lot based off of her build, and you have to be very decisive on your windows with this champion. Like you have to know when to ult and how to play team fights well. And there are like a lot of decisions for you to make in team fights, like your E usage is pretty important, and when to ult in and where to ult is also pretty important. So I think like by nature of the fact that she has a lot of decisions to make in the game, I think it makes her quite like a bit harder to play than most champs. So I'd put her here. Besides that, I think her matchups are not the best. Like she kind of struggles into Jinx and Aphelios, Draven in lane, but I think she can navigate these matchups by being so versatile, right? Like by having like a different build, it makes some matchups easier than others. So that's why I'd put her here. Jinx, I think, is like one of the best champions on the patch right now. I'd put her in S for sure. They nerfed static Shiv, so her static Shiv build isn't as good, but you can still just go Kraken PD IE, which is I think is her best build right now. Makes her really strong. I think Jinx can go into S because she pretty much doesn't have any losing matchups. Like she can navigate any matchup right now. She struggles a lot into perk matchups like Varus Ashe, but on this patch, like people aren't playing Varus Ashe as much, so you're less likely to like play it versus a really hard lane, which makes Jinx even better. I think she's pretty easy to play. Like pretty much just hit the closest target to you. She has no real mechanics in her hit that are hard, and she has 100% uptime. I think one of the most broken things about Jinx is that there's 100% DPS uptime as opposed to champions like Aphelios, right? Like Aphelios is like wants to fight on specific weapon timers, so he doesn't have 100% uptime. Same as Kogmaw. Like Kogmaw just wants to fight when his W is active. And when his W is down, he doesn't want to fight, but Jinx can just fight like whenever she wants. Like she has 100% uptime, which is why I think she's also really good. Her build is really good, and her matchups are fine, and she pretty much pairs well with any support and can pair well in any game. You pretty much just need one reset in a kill, and you can just solo win a team fight. So I think Jinx is really strong right now. Kalista, I'd put her in B blind here. Kalista is really hard to play. Like her kit is really hard to play. Her hop is really hard to make use of, and you have to be like really like well versed in Kalista to be able to make her work. I wouldn't play this champion unless you're really good at it already, or unless you find it really fun and you want to learn it. But don't expect much success at the start if you're just learning Kalista, of course. I think her playstyle is also pretty hard. Like you need a very aggressive a very aggressively oriented mindset to play Kalista, and you have to be very decisive and very clean. Like you can't be making a lot of mistakes on this champion because mistakes on this champion are amplified a lot more, and making mistakes on this champion and falling behind early makes her quite useless. I think she's also countered by a lot of things. Like she's countered by slows a lot. Like champions like Talia counter Kalista really hard. So it's pretty hard to play Kalista in a lot of games, which is why I'll also put her in B. But she also needs like a pretty specific support pairing. Like she either needs a champion who's strong in lane, like Ashe, that can harass and poke and bully a lot, or an engaged champion. So that's why I think she's pretty hard to make work right now. Jhin, I'd put in B as well. I think Jhin is pretty easy to play. He just has one play style. You pretty much just follow up on your team's engage, and you look to make picks with your W and ult. And his abilities are pretty simple. And you pretty much just play Jhin to like bully lanes / neutralize lanes. Like for example, if you play Jhin versus Caitlyn, you just play to like neutralize the lane and stop it from pushing. I think he's fine right now. He's pretty decent with crit, IE especially. I think he does do a lot of damage and he scales pretty well with the crit buffs, but I just don't think he offers as much as the other champions in the list. I think he's just a solid pick, but nothing too special. Lucian, put him in C blind, I think. I think Lucian Nami is still pretty decent, even though Nami got nerfed with the mandate nerfs. So if you're playing Lucian Nami in like a higher elo game, I'd put him like if you're like a challenger Lucian Nami or Grandmaster Plus, I'd put him in A. But yeah, once again, I think that's way too specific. I think in general, unlikely that you're gonna play with Nami, and I think in general in like lower elo brackets, this champion is quite hard to make work. Pretty much only useful if you get a pretty large lead in lane, and you snowball a lot, and yeah, it's pretty much only good with either Nami or an engaged support like Nautilus or Rel. So, which is why I think this champion is very conditional, and it's very hard to make work. I put him as a hard difficulty because I think his kit is pretty easy. It's pretty simple. Just want to play off your resets, like your E resets. But like his playstyle is pretty hard to make work just because he's quite weak as well. So I think weaker champions are obviously harder to make work because you have to be like really skilled at knowing how to play Lucian to be able to make him work. Kogmaw, let's put Kogmaw in A. I think Kogmaw as a champion, once again, is quite simple. Like his kit is quite simple. You just want to go forward when you press W. But I'd put him in the medium difficulty bracket because I think it's like you have to have a certain level of nuance to pilot him in team fights. Like you want to fight when your W's on, and although it's pretty easy to like to think about, right? Like you pretty much just want to go forward when your W's on and go back when your W's off in team fights. But I think the thing is, it's about like knowing when to use your W is pretty crucial on this champ, and can make or break a team fight. So which is why I put him in medium difficulty. I think Kogmaw is pretty good right now, though. I think his matchups are pretty good. I'd say he's losing into Jinx, but he's definitely playable. He's fine into Aphelios, fine into Ashe, kind of hard into Draven, but definitely playable. And he's good into Kaisa and Ezreal, Jhin, Lucian. So I think he has pretty good matchups right now, and he's really good with like a Lulio or Emilio, but he also works with an engaged support as well, which is why I think is pretty good. I think his itemization is also pretty good. So yeah, I think he fits into a good spot in the meta right now. MF, I'd put MF in B blind. I think MF is a decent pick. She's really easy to play, obviously. Not much mechanics in her kit. And her team fighting style is pretty simple and straightforward. You just hit people who are close to you, look for double ups, and just look to ult off CC. I think she's decent with because she can go 2 builds. She can go like the Kraken Slayer on hit PTA build, Kraken Slayer into IE to just full crit DPS build, or you can go lethality as well. But I think once again, I'll put her in A actually, now that I think about it. Because her matchups are like pretty decent. Like she's pretty decent into Jinx, Aphelios, Kaisa, Ezreal, Jhin, Kalista, even Lucian. So I'd put her in A because she's she has a lot of good matchups right now, and she's pretty versatile by having 2 builds. Yeah, so I'd put her in A, but once again, like she can't pop off as hard as Jinx can. So I won't put her in S, but she does better than the champions in B, so I'd put her in A for now. Nilah, I'd put her as an S tier counter. And the thing with Nilah is that the champion is really strong in the right spot, but the right spots are very rare, I'd say. Like you need a lot of specific conditions to be met. When it comes to her difficulty as a champion, I think her kit is pretty straightforward. Her playstyle can be quite unique, which is why I'd classify her as a hard champion. She's unique because she can work as an engaged champion in some games, but she can also just work as like a secondary engaged champion in some games or a counter engaged champion in some games. I think like figuring out which role you're playing in the game can be quite difficult, and like you have to really know how to pilot the champion to make it work in team fight situations in general. And your W usage is pretty important as well as your ult, and your E usage, and just say like you play the team fight out, which is why I'd put her as a hard champion. I think Nilah, like the conditions in which Nilah is very good is if she has engage on her team, like if she has Rakan, champions that want to go forward, like Rakan, Hecarim jungle, Azir mid, champions that can go forward with her and play off of her engage and also engage for her so she can follow up as well. I think she does well into lanes that don't have high range. So she'll struggle like really hard into like Caitlyn Lux or something because she just gets poked out and she doesn't have enough burst damage in lane to actually make trades work. So she just gets bullied really hard. She's really hard to work. I'd pick her versus champions that aren't that strong in lane and are quite short range. Like I'd pick her versus Kaisa, MF, Jhin. She's fine into Aphelios. But then once again, she struggles into champions like Jinx, Caitlyn, Kogmaw even. So that's why I think she's really good in a very specific spot. So I'd put her in as an S tier counter pick. Like she's good to be picked later in the draft when you see a lot of their champions. So yeah. Yasuo, I think pretty much functions very similarly to Nilah. But I think he just does what Nilah does, just slightly worse. So I'd put him in A tier. I think the crit buffs are nice for Yasuo though, so I think it's definitely playable. But once again, I think he's just reserved as a counter pick. Yeah. Samira. Do I put Samira as a counter or blind? I think I'd put Samira as a blind pick. Samira, I think, is pretty good in the right spots, but pretty bad in the bad spots. And she needs like a lot to make it work. Like for example, she pretty much only works well with engage supports. I would never pick Samira with an enchanter. And she works a lot better when her team has multiple engage tools. Like if you have a Hecarim jungle, once again, like an Ezreal that can go in for you and shuffle people back into you. I think she works really well in like one-way combo team comps with like Orianna, Jarvan, etc. Orianna, Jarvan, Ral comps. I put her as medium difficulty because I think mechanically she can be a bit tricky, but also her playstyle could be a bit difficult at times. Like you have to be very decisive on when to go in. Pretty much once you go in on Samira, like you're not going out, right? Unless you get a kill and get a reset on your E. So just knowing when to go in and being very decisive makes it a bit more difficult than other champions, I'd say. I think her matchups are pretty decent. Her matchups, like the way you play Samira is that you play for kills. So matchups can swing off of one kill. So pretty much depends a lot on who your support is playing and how well your support is playing. But I think in the right conditions, she can be pretty strong. But in the wrong conditions, she's quite weak, which is why I'd put her in B. Sivir, I think, is also a B blind right now. She's very easy to play, very simple. I think she's actually pretty strong if she can scale and if she is playing versus a comp which will get a lot of value from her ricochet. Like for example, Siva's damage output is purely dependent on her ricochet, her W ability in team fights. So if you're playing versus like a front to back team comp that has like a tank in the front, like a few tanks in the front, and then has their DPS in the back, you can get like a lot of value from her ricochet. But if you're playing versus a team comp that's like that is high range, like let's say they have a Jace top and then Ezreal mid, and champions that aren't going to engage into you and just pick you out, you just like she struggles a lot because you can't really get value out of a W. In the same way, if you're playing versus a comp that's like going to flank you, like versus a Camille top lane instead of like an Ornn, like champions that want to flank you, it's hard again to get value out of your ricochet because champions aren't going to be like bunched up together. They're going to be like separated and flanking, so it's hard to get value. But I think she's like really strong as a counter. I'd also put her as an S tier counter because versus the right comp, a short range comp that's going to be bunched up together, and versus like a champion like Zeri, who's like a relatively easy lane, she has a lot of value. So I'd put her S tier as a counter. As a blind, I'd put her in B. She also struggles versus like Jinx, champions that have high range, which is very limited in her range. So I'd put her in B. Varus, I think, has lost some power recently. I think the nerf in like 13.5 affected him, and just like the meta shift kind of affected him, like with the crit buffs. And he can't like really build crit, so other champions have gotten stronger. So as a result, he's gotten slightly weaker. I still think he's very versatile because you can go on hit or lethality. So I think he can navigate a lot of matchups. He does well. He does very well into Jinx as a lethality poke mage versus Jinx and Aphelios and Kogmaw. I think his matchups are really good. Yeah, but I made him like moderate difficulty because I think his kit is pretty simple, but like there's like a lot of nuance to it. Like you can get a lot of resets off your W if you play well. That's why I put him as a moderate difficult champion. I think like I want to put Varus in S, but I'd leave him in A because I just don't think he has the same pop off potential as a champion like Jinx. And like he doesn't have the same carry potential, but I think he's a really solid pick and he does well in a lot of spots. Zeri I'd put in S tier with Jinx. I think once again, I think this champion is very easy to play. Like she has like a bit of a learning curve, like when it comes to her Q and how to use her E and when to ult. But once you like get these things down, she's quite easy to pilot. She pretty much functions in a similar way every game, has the same build, just wants to play front to back. I think the difficulty in this champion lies in her E usage and in her ult usage, like holding ult for the right scenario and not using it too early or too late and make or break a team fight. But in general, I still think she's pretty easy to play. I think the Shiv nerfs definitely hurt her a little bit, making it 200 gold more expensive, but I still think she's really fine. She's really good. Her build is really good. Like she has like a really nice item curve. The matchups are pretty good right now. Like she can pretty much pilot into any matchup, even a hard matchup like let's say Draven. You can pilot through it. You can just farm and then play for level 6, and then once you get level 6, you get pretty strong and can look for all-ins. So she definitely has harder matchups, but I think she's very versatile because she can pilot through any matchup, and she's very safe as a champion. She has like a dash that can dash over walls, makes her very safe in lane and in mid game. This champion is just very strong right now. Vayne, I'd put as an A tier counter. I think Vayne is pretty much never blindable. Like you never want to blind Vayne. She struggles a lot into a lot of matchups. Like she's pretty unplayable versus Draven, Varus, Caitlyn, Kalista. Like a lot of matchups make her unplayable. I would never blind Vayne. I think her build is decent right now. So she's pretty playable in the right spot. I'd pick her into like the thing with Vayne and why I put her as an A tier counter and not an S tier counter is that like Vayne is pretty much only like a last pick champion because like you need to see a lot of champions on the enemy team for you to be able to make this champion work. Like Vayne doesn't only want to counter the enemy bot lane, but she also wants to counter the enemy comp. Like for example, Vayne is good into Zeri, right? A champion that wants to go forward into Vayne like Zeri or Samira, and champions which you can kite and come forward into her, she's good into. Also champs that aren't strong in lane, she's good into, that can punish her weak laning phase in low range. For example, if the enemy team has a Zeri, but they also have a Jace top and an Azir mid, you still don't want to play Vayne, even though she counters Zeri, because she's like pretty useless versus Jace and Azir, champs that outrange her really hard. So she's only good into a comp like Ornn top, Sejuani jungle, Galio mid, Zeri, like champs that are short range, champs that don't have any point and click CC, that have dodgeable CC, and that can't lock her down easily. And champions that go forward is where she thrives. That put her as an A tier counter. Xayah, I think, is pretty decent right now. I think she's an S tier counter for sure. If you can find Xayah angle versus a dive comp, she's really strong. Like she does very well into dive champions, like walk into her feathers, and she just gets so much value out of them. Once again, she struggles. She struggles versus high range lanes like Caitlyn, Lux, lanes that poke her out. She can't like really do much of it verse. She struggles versus high range comps in general, like Azir once again. As a blind pick, I'd put her in B because she does have a lot of counters. But once your champion gets going, like once you get 2 or 3 items on this champion, you're really strong and have one of the highest DPS outputs out of any ADC with your W steroid. So I'll just put her as an S tier counter for now. Which is pretty easy to play. She functions pretty much similarly in every game. She just wants to like fight backwards and wants to fight champions as they come into her, or just follow up and unengage with your feathers and your ult. So it's pretty simple to play. Twitch, I think Twitch is actually really strong right now. I'd put him as an S tier counter. I think he's the best counter in the game right now. He's a really good counter pick into Zeri and Jinx and Kogmaw. Even Aphelios he's fight into. But he struggles a lot into champions like Draven. He's okay into Kaisa, but he's still countered. Struggles really hard into Kalista. struggles pretty hard into Varus. But I think as a counter pick is really, really, really strong versus Jinx and Zeri in particular. You pretty much just like you pretty much get a free laning phase versus champions like Jinx and Zeri, and you can just scale for free. And you can always look on them with your Q and your ult once you hit level 6. Like they're really scared to walk up to anything when you're off the map. I think his build is really good right now with Bork into Runans into IE. He has a really strong 1 item spike and 3 item spike. So I think he's pretty decent right now in the meta. I think, yeah, he just struggles into some lanes, which makes him hard to blind. But in the right spot, he's really good. Put him as medium difficulty because I think he's really easy to play as a champion. His kit is very simple, but his playstyle is pretty like unique. Like he plays as like an assassin ADC most of the time, and like when you approach team fights, you pretty much want to flank on the back line. So finding those flank angles and just being decisive and just playing to assassinate people makes him a bit harder than the traditional ADC, which is why I'd put him the medium difficulty. We got TF. I think the TF nerfs and the Shiv nerfs make him pretty bad right now. The nerfs were like really big on TF, and the Shiv nerfs also affect him a lot. I think he struggles a lot into high range champions like Jinx and Kogmaw in the current meta. Also Varus. So I think this champion has fallen off a lot. I think he's definitely playable, but I think he's just not that strong right now. Let's put him as like a medium difficulty as well because he has an ult ability and he functions as like a side laning ADC, which is also quite unique. So that's why I put him as medium difficulty. Moving on, Smolder. I think with Smolder is he has a lot of bad matchups, make him hard to blind. Like he struggles versus Jinx because he gets pushed in all lane and he gets outscaled. He gets outscaled by Zeri because his scaling isn't that strong anymore. But I think the champion is a little bit underrated. I think it's definitely playable. I put him in B blind right now. I think he can work as an S tier counter though, versus champions like Ezreal or Samira, Sivir, MF. I think he does well into these champions and can get a lot of value. Pretty much if you can get through lane without getting punished too hard, the champion is still really strong. I'll put him as medium difficulty because I think his kit is very, very simple, right? His kit is very easy. But his playstyle can be a bit harder because you have to really be able to maximize your stacks and like get a lot of stacks per minute to make this champion useful. He's pretty much gated entirely by how much stacks you can get. So just being aware of how to stack well on this champion and when to stack and taking jungle camps and having like a very high CS per minute makes this champion a bit harder to play. I think the buffs to his Q crit pretty much make him only able to build crit right now as a viable build as opposed to like the Riftmaker style build. But I do think the buffs are actually pretty nice for his scaling. So I think in the right spots he can be pretty good. I'd put him in B. Senna got a buff recently on this patch to make her playable as an ADC again. I'd put her in C though because I don't think the champion is that strong as an ADC. You don't get that many souls compared to when you're fasting. And I think her build right now is pretty good. Like she can go 2 builds. She can go like the lethality build versus squishier team comps, or she can go a more on-hit build with Bork, LDR, IE, etc. I think her build can be quite versatile. Actually, now that I think about it, just by virtue of the fact that she's quite versatile, I'd put her in B as well. I think her kit is pretty simple once again, but her playstyle can be a bit different as well. Like you want to be able to play for stacks a lot, be very mindful of your stacks. Again, a lot of her DPS is gated behind her stacks as well, so I think it makes it a bit harder to play. I think her matchups are pretty decent. She's good into Zeri and Jinx, Aphelios, good into Kogmaw. Struggles versus champions that are like really strong in lane and that have high range, like Varus, Draven, Caitlyn. But besides that, she's pretty good. Hwei is an interesting one. I think Hwei is pretty much the only mage which I've been seeing recently. So I don't have an opinion on really other mages like Ziggs or Seraphine because I haven't seen them or played them in a while. So Hwei's the only mage that I have here. I think Hwei is actually pretty decent as a blind pick mage. The thing about Hwei is that when you pick it in champ select, the enemy team will never expect it to go bot lane. So that's a really big benefit of picking Hwei. They're always expected to go mid or support. So just having that makes him pretty good, and he's pretty strong in lane. Like, he has a good wave clear. He has a good poke. He does like really well into champions that are immobile, like Aphelios, Jinx. He just poked them out really easily. But he does struggle later on into the game versus a champion like Jinx, because Jinx has very high range and gets outranged a lot. Also struggles versus champions that have high mobility, like Zeri, because it's really hard to hit Zeri with any spell, especially as the game goes on and she gets faster and faster, and her E cooldown gets shorter and shorter. Also struggles hard versus really aggressive champions like Draven, so which is why I'd put him in B. But I think it's definitely a solid pick, and yeah, but I think you have to be quite good at playing like the mage playstyle to make this champion work. I put him as a medium difficulty because his playstyle is very unique for a typical ADC player who's not very used to playing mages, and his kit is pretty like can be quite complex. So yeah, so that's why I put him here. Anyways, so that's the whole tier list done. I think it looks pretty accurate right now from here. Yeah, so let me know what you think. If you have any comments or if you disagree with anything, let me know. I'm happy to like discuss it in the comments. And if you could leave a like or subscribe, it helps me a lot. So that'd be very helpful. So yeah, thank you for watching.